Small glitch. We have our next speaker, Dr. Prabjot Kaur. Are you connecting, Dr. Prabjot?
Yes, I'm here, Dr. Chitra.
Yeah. She's one of the young ophthalmologists with specialization in retinal diseases, uveitis, and ocular immunology from LVPI Vishakhapatnam. And she's going to talk on a very challenging topic, diffuse unilateral subacute neuroretinitis. Let's hear from her.
So thank you, Dr. Chitra. Thank you, Dr. Chitra, for giving me this opportunity to speak here. So let me begin with the talk here, which is titled "The Cabinet of Curiosities on DUSN," that is diffuse unilateral subacute neuroretinitis. Now, starting with the first question, what is DUSN? DUSN is a nematode associated or causing retinopathy, which is characterized by recurrent crops of yellowish-white evanescent outer retinal lesions. Second question, how to diagnose DUSN? So just like a lot of other clinical entities in uveitis, pattern recognition is the answer as well. Now, DUSN is a clinical diagnosis with a peculiar pattern. Lack of awareness of this peculiar pattern is making DUSN a grossly underdiagnosed clinical entity. So I will help you understand how a person should diagnose, acute or a acute stage DUSN presenting to us. So this is how a fundus picture would look like. Now, to help us understand, I'll be breaking this into three parts. First would be the appearance of these yellowish-white outer retinitis lesions.
You please, all of you, mute yourself. Yeah.
Thank you. So to begin with, it'll be having presence of these yellowish-white outer retinitis lesion in one quadrant, usually, and then you will see this appearance of this focal vascular sheathing in the same quadrant. You might sometimes be able to appreciate presence of a worm which causes this disease. Second would be presence of a optic disc edema, and third would be presence of this subretinal yellowish-white precipitates or presence of these subretinal tracts, which basically suggest that this is an active stage of DUSN or acute DUSN. Moving ahead to the third question would be, which are the worms that are responsible for DUSN? Now, a lot of them have been reported in literature, but I'll be concentrating on two. First would be B. procyornis, or a larger worm, which is about the size of 1500 micron. And the second more common one is A. caninum, which is also the hookworm, which we say. Its size is somewhere around less than 1000 microns, so somewhere around 400 to 650 microns. So how do you clinically differentiate whether the DUSN that we are seeing is a small worm causing disease or the large worm which is causing the disease? So here are a few tips and tricks to help you identify if it is a small worm associated DUSN or a larger worm. In small worm disease, the lesions are usually grayish-white or yellowish outer retinal lesions. As the worm moves slowly, the rate of progression is also slower, as against the large worm disease, where the lesions are grayish-brown to color. And as the worm moves faster, the rate of progression is also rapid. Also, systemically, if we evaluate, in small worm disease, you will be able to look at these entry sites or entry lesions on the feet. Whereas in a large worm disease, there is also a possibility of meningoencephalitis apart from the ocular involvement which is present. So what do these worms do? Worms basically, because of the local toxic tissue effect that happens because of the byproduct of this worm, causes these early stage features, which we just described in the previous slides. Also, the diffuse reaction, which happens as a result of the host immune response, affects not just the outer retina, but the inner retina as well, leading to the late stage of the presentation. The sixth question, what are the clinical features of early versus late stage of DUSN? Now, we already described in detail the early stage of fundus picture, where one would see this outer retinal lesions to begin with in a single zone mid-peripheral area. And these lesions are typically evanescent. That is, they start in one area and then they gradually disappear from there. And then you start seeing new crops of retinitis in the other areas, which would be either adjacent to the previous ones or away from it, depending on the mobility of the worm. In the late stages, one can appreciate an enhanced ILM reflex, which is known as orifices sign, or would be able to pick up these subretinal whitish atrophic spots, which are known as Garcia's sign, which are basically the subretinal, the tracts probably more associated with the large worm disease. In the later stages, you would appreciate outer retinal involvement in the form of photoreceptor degeneration, RP loss, and inner retinal involvement in the form of loss of ganglion cells and RNFL along with optic atrophy. How to localize the worm? Now, identifying the worm is difficult. They're usually seen in the vicinity of the lesions. They are usually seen in this 6 or 9 number configuration, if one can appreciate how the worm gets, one end gets curled on itself, giving it a 6 or 9 number configuration. So with this, let me give you 4 tips to locate the worm. Identifying the worm, contact lens is the best technique. Motility will be useful, especially with the larger worms. Location of the worm would be somewhere near the vicinity of the lesions. And the configuration, just as we discussed in the previous slide, would be somewhere, would be a 6 or a 9 number configuration. The 8th question, what are the differentials of DUSN? Now, there are a lot of entities which resemble, but I'll be speaking only a few of them. So first, let me differentiate DUSN from mutes, that is another evanescent white dot syndrome. Now, what happens in mutes is usually you'll see, on FFA, there'll be a typical FFA wreath pattern on FFA, which will be present, which is not likely to be present in DUSN. Second thing is these lesions would resolve spontaneously over a period of time. But if you do not see an improvement within 3 weeks and FFA lesions persist, or there are new lesions or newer crops of retinitis which start appearing, think of DUSN. Another entity one can, might get confused with DUSN would be a serpiginous choroiditis. But serpiginous choroiditis is again a superficial choroiditis, and these lesions are more placoid. If you try to see, this is more posterior pole involvement, unlike DUSN, which we just discussed. And if you do an autofluorescence, you'll be able to delineate the serpiginous pattern of involvement in these eyes. One clinical entity which resembles or mimics the late stage of DUSN is unilateral RP. In unilateral RP, we know that we see attenuated vessels, disc pallor, bony spicules. But ERG is rarely extinguished in DUSN, differentiating it from tapetoretinal degenerations. In DUSN, you will get a negative ERG, but rarely it is completely extinguished. Moving on to the 9th question, what is the role of systemic evaluation of DUSN? So stool examination and serologic testing, although it has been mentioned in literature, we do not do these investigations regularly. Unless peripheral eosinophilia is present, there is no need of further systemic evaluation. One can examine the feet to look and ask for a history of walking barefoot, and you might be able to pick up these entry site of infection or some old scars, which will help you, help you guide to your diagnosis of DUSN.
Well, you have 1 minute remaining.
Thank you. I'll just finish it. So what happens to the skin lesions with treatment? They spontaneously resolve they also resolve along with the ocular lesions with treatment with oral antibiotics. My last question would be how to treat DUSN. I'll be giving you a protocol here. So if you see a worm visible, then you photocoagulate the worm. That's the treatment of choice. But if you do not see a worm which is visible, then you see if there is presence of any vitritis or not. If there is vitritis, medical treatment in the form of broad spectrum antihelminthic drugs should be initiated. If vitritis is absent, then again you start medical treatment along with scatter photocoagulation, which will break down the blood retinal barrier and increase the drug penetration. There is no need of photocoagulation in the presence of vitritis. Why? Because the blood retinal barrier is probably already compromised, and hence we can defer scatter photocoagulation in patients with a pre-existing vitritis. So with treatment, as you see with photocoagulation, these lesions spontaneously resolve. However, sometimes there might be newer crops of retinitis which come up despite laser treatment. In that case, you might need to do some more additional laser and continue your systemic antibiotic in the form of either ivermectin. If single dose was given, you repeat it, or tablet albendazole 400 milligram per day for 30 days. And finally, you see, you can come out of, you can treat this condition successfully with a relatively good visual prognosis. The prognosis becomes poor when it reaches the late stage of DUSN. So to summarize, remember the pattern of DUSN. Outer crops of evanescent retinitis-like lesions or white outer retinitis lesions, disc edema, subretinal tracts. Remember to differentiate the small worm versus large worm disease, which whereas the small worm is slowly progressive, the larger worm has a rapid rate of progression. Now, the 4 tips to locate the worm: contact lens is the best technique. Look at the motility of the worm. They're usually near the vicinity of these retinitis lesions. They are of number 6 or 9 configuration. And then finally, the treatment of DUSN. If worm is visible, photocoagulative. If it is not visible, medical treatment. In the presence of vitritis, you do not need a scatter photocoagulation, but in the absence of vitritis, with the medical treatment, you should even do some amount of scatter photocoagulation. And that would help in increasing the drug penetration. I would like to end my talk here and acknowledge Dr. Avinash Patange, Dr. Ketan Saoji, and our diagnostic team at LVP IGMRV campus in the making of this presentation. Thank you.
It was a wonderful talk, Prabjot. I mean, I never expected anything less from you. I'm sure you covered it all. Just one question I'll ask before all the experts can ask. Do you have any OCT markers for DUSN staging?
OCT markers for DUSN staging. We can appreciate those precipitates, which I was mentioning, outer retinal precipitates or subretinal precipitates. Sometimes you might see a neurosensory detachment, but again, on FFA, you don't actually see a leakage in that area. But apart from that, and then you see an intact ellipsoid zone in the later stages with the thinning of the RNFL layer and the ganglion cell layer. But apart from that, regarding if you ask me staging, I am not probably aware. I think some seniors can add to it.
So on to you, all of you experts, you could ask question. And one small question before you all ask. This doing laser photocoagulation, if there are multiple worms and they are moving, it could be that you have lasered in one area, the worm has moved on. So laser, even if there are worms, you would do laser and combine with medical treatment, right?
If we see the worm, yes, we should do the laser. That's the treatment of choice.
No, in fact, in my experience, even if I see worm, I give albendazole and it kills the worm. So without photocoagulation, a prolonged course of albendazole, 14 days or 28 days, definitely help the patient. I have never done photocoagulation. I have always treated with medical treatment.
Just
yes,
make one comment.
Yeah.
Fluorescent angiogram would be very helpful to find out the tract of the worm. We have done some cases and where you could find out the small bead-like tracts over that worm tract. We can see all over the fundus. And we also can, ray-free light also can find out a little better the worms.
Yes, Dr. Avinash?
No, and just to add a little bit of to point what Dr. Ratnam had made. So with an additional advantage, what we as a retinal surgeon, so we doing lasers becomes very handy for us, and we know that the sure shot kill. The killing happens then there, but there is a reason why what you mentioned has a lot of relevance. It is just not going behind that one worm which is there in the retina or maybe another worm. We have to consider many times it's a systemic disease, for which the systemic anti-nematodal drug is extremely important, the broad spectrum one, either ivermectin or albendazole. But what laser does is it just reduces the duration of anti-nematodal drug which needs to be administered. One need not go all the way up to 28 to 30 days. Can, like ivermectin, maybe 2 doses at weekly interval, and albendazole maybe 3 to 5 days can also be considered in such kind of cases.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Avinash sir, had one question regarding when you try to laser these worms. We know that these worms are pretty much photophobic, and many a times they say that you have to do first a boundary and then try to sufficiently intense burn so that you can see the shriveling of the worm when you are trying to laser it. And some people have also suggested to use a slit beam adjacent to the worm so that it doesn't run away. So what are the simple tricks to do the photocoagulation for these worms?
To be very frank, one biggest advantage I found, I'll say only one biggest advantage I found with Pascal laser is treating this worm. Is one shot you can put that array and finish off this worm in no time than with a single spot.
Multi-spot.
The biggest advantage I found with pattern, which I don't want to get into the boutique part of the pattern laser.
But the thing arises only when it is slightly closer to the fovea or in the macular area, which is 500 or 1000 microns away from the fovea. In those cases, we might have to use a single spot.
Not necessarily. When you have a bigger worm, that's a challenge. It always happens. So, like what Dr. JB mentioned, red-free light, slit, and use a power setting which is of a longer duration when the hit is really hot, not superficial one. And to be very frank, people say you hit the head and tail. When you look at the worm there, you can't make it doesn't have a head and tail like a human being. So or any other, you can't make out what is a head and what is a tail. So hit one end, and if it does not move, you thank God and hit the other end. So, but all those praying to God will get away. If you have pattern, you just put one array and just say it's goodbye text.
Oh, good.
Thank you.